The two requisites to brew any table-shattering Storm deck are card draw and mana. Prosper can fulfill both requisites to some degree on his own, by making him the perfect heart of the deck and the Eye of the Storm. But we must also include some more enablers to bring the thunder to our General's lightning. A card that will do double duty in this deck as a mana generator and a discard outlet that can fuel Prosper's interest in Impulsive Draw is Birgi, God of Storytelling. On her front side, she gives you a red mana whenever you cast a spell, functionally making classic red draw spells like Faithless Looting free, but often will act as a discount on your spells. This is particularly impactful when using rituals like Dark Ritual or Infernal Plunge, since the net mana will be positive, while still ticking up our store count. In the scenario that we have another mana generator on board, and we need to trigger Prosper, or in the case where we just need to scour our deck for an answer, we can use her backside, Harnfell, Horn of Bounty. At 5 mana, the upfront cost can be expensive, but is outweighed by an ability that allows it to pitch a card from our hand to exile the top 2 cards of our library and play them to end the turn. An ability that has extreme utility in any circumstance, but is maximized when we have Prosper on the battlefield, as the cards we impermanently peel from Harnfell trigger Prosper's treasure-giving ability. On the topic of treasures, this card will be giving you more value than a 12-pack of toilet paper in March 2020. Stormkiln Artist fills a similar role to Birgi, but only triggers when you cast or copy an instant sorcery spell. However, the copy caveat can be extremely useful if we resolve a storm card like Empty Warrens before we have a high enough storm count to win, as each copy from the storm ability will trigger Artist, meaning we get a treasure for each instant of storm. The last storm mana benefactor we have in the deck is Runaway Steamkin, a 2 mana Angry Elemental that gets a +1/+1 counter whenever you cast a red spell. He caps at 3 counters, but allows you to remove them to reap 3 mana. The advantage here, like Stormkiln Artist, is that we don't need to spend this mana at the same turn that we accumulate it, banking it for a turn where we can maximize the amount of spells we can cast to reach a high storm count. You may be wondering how I came to the decision to make this commander a Storm Chaser. Prosper himself can provide a reliable engine to generate mana, and essentially draws an extra card each turn. While his form ability can enable his latter, the fact that we are not dependent on each other, i.e. the second ability can be triggered independently, presents the opportunity for us to capitalize on the red staple mechanic of the contemporary era of Magic, Impulsive Draw. As many experienced Commander players know, having repeatable effects and permanents, rather than efficient one-time effects, is more useful, as the games are normally won through attrition and not swift execution. With this in mind, I will tell you how we can consistently use Impulsive Draw each turn with these cards. Chandra Heart of Fire will keep the deck pumping out card advantage who stays around. Her inclusion in the deck is primarily for the use of her +1 ability, which allows us to pitch our hand to exile the top 3 cards of our library and play them until end of turn. While our minds may think of this as a wheel with a flat tire, the truth is that in this build it's pure gas. Once we resolve Prosper, the additional treasure adds up, and it's rare that we have a hand a couple turns after we cast a general. Therefore, in the majority of cases, this means we essentially draw 3, with the possibility of also generating 3 mana each turn. In instances where we do have a grip, due to the high density of instant sorceries in the build, it can fill the role of setting up game-winning cards such as Past in Flames and Mizzix's Mastery. A second incarnation of Chandra, who you may be more accustomed to seeing on the modern tables of your LGS, is Chandra, Torch of Defiance. She is destined to help derail your opponents, as she has a built-in Impulse Draw as a +1, but has 2 other relevant abilities. If you scratch her back by giving her a loyalty counter, she can cover your back early game by giving you 2 red mana. And if you return the favour for 3 turns, she gives a game-ending emblem that deals 5 damage to target creature or player whenever you cast a spell. Its presence in the game makes your storm count a countdown to extinction, as chaining together rituals or looting spells can spell the end for an opponent and their board. Unfortunately, it does not trigger on the copies made by our storm cards. Nevertheless, it will add an extra layer of lethality. On the lower end of the curve, we're going to use Valakut Exploration to quench our impulsive draw cravings. This 3 mana enchantment exiles the top card of your library whenever a land enters the battlefield, and you may play it until end of turn. If it's something too expensive to play when the effect is triggered, it places all cards exiled this way into your graveyard and deals damage to each opponent equal to the total CMC of those cards. In combination with fetch lands like Evolving Wilds and Terramorphic Expanse, we can blow the top off our library twice per turn, and the graveyard clause gives us fuel for some of our win conditions later in the game. The last permanent we're going to discuss that gives us a card that can trigger Prosper's ability is Ubermask, a 4 casting cost artifact that places any card a player will draw in exile. Moreover, the card gives each player the opportunity to cast those cards from exile until end of turn. In collaborative effort with Prosper, this card gives each card we draw a discount of 1 mana due to the treasure we make, but can coerce our opponents into making suboptimal plays, as the urgency of having to cast the card the turn is drawn will add to our storm count, but can remove key pieces of interactions or win conditions from opponents and completely from the game. As we're playing a deck that can do overhand what Jason Pollock does to canvases, with running wheels that can give us a new grip, making Ubermaster more asymmetrical, as on our turn we can cast the wheel and the exile cards from it, while unless your opponents have any cards to play at instant speed, they'll have no hand and 7 cards directly sent to exile. Lastly, we need to include some single-use impulse draw to fill in the blanks while we don't have any of the aforementioned card draw generators. A duplicitous but invaluable card that scales with our ability to ricochet spells and triggers as the game goes on. Galvanic Relay is a storm benefactor and enabler, all in 3 mana sorcery. Besides being a perfect fit for this deck, the only drawback is that the cards you exile this way can only be cast a turn after you use Relay. While it can ensure that you have the necessary resources to bring the game to conclusion, seeing what is in your exile pile can make the table conclusively decide to take you out before you unleash your tabletop tempest. A card the table will know and hate to love is Jessica's Will, a red staple and a card with superfluous and synergy in this Prosper deck. Due to our commander being a key piece of our engine, it's rare that we don't want him on board, ergo granting us the option to entwine both effects. Thusly, both effects are harmonious to our deck's goal, as the extra we can generate is a ritual in everything but name, and assists in enlarging our storm count, while the impulse draw trigger, giving us a base of 3 mana if we can cast each card exiled with Jessica's Will, will essentially make the 3 mana sorceries free. Furthermore, having access to the top 3 may be all we need, as Insidious Dreams is our priority tutor in this deck. It is a slightly obscure card, so let me explain what it does in the case you've ever heard of it, or just a bit awe-eyed in regards to its rules text. This sorcery for 3 generic and a black has an additional cost of discarding X cards to search our library for that many cards and put them on top of our library in any order. On the surface it resembles an inefficient vampiric tutor, but the use here is indispensable to our game plan, as we can sequence the order of cards, setting up a chain of rituals, more impulsive draw, and a storm card at the end of our chain, which can be all we need to close out the game, with the secondary role of filling our graveyard for targets for our additional win cons. Excluding the classic spell sling and win cons we discussed, we're going to use additional game enters that are unique to this deck. The first 2 are seen in other storm decks, but nevertheless are as effective here. Influx Reservoir and Sentinel Tower can win us the game through simply just escalating our storm count, as both reward us exponentially for each spell we cast in a turn. Sentinel Tower deals damage directly proportionate to the number of spells we cast each turn, whereas Influx Reservoir does so indirectly, as we can weaponize the life we reap from it to one-shot an opponent by paying 50 life. The cumulative value comes from having these early in the game, so we're going to add Magda, Brazen Outlaw, to our build to give ourselves a tutor for these pieces, since you can convert 5 treasures into one of these payoffs. Another card that can utilize our treasures is Giripa Aethergrid, which can help us utilize our treasures to snipe off annoying threats if resolved early, or be part of a game-winning combo. To commence this combo, we're going to use Stormkiln Artist in conjunction with a card that created a suffocating miasma over the legacy format called Chain of Smog. The card is noxious when using tandem with Magecraft abilities such as Stormkiln Artist or Sedgemoor Witch, as it can make infinite copies of itself as long as you are its target. Once we have infinite treasures from this deadly interaction, we simply just tap them with Giripa Aethergrid to kill our opponents with a torrent of tiny tasers.